Welcome to the Business of Content podcast, a place where you can learn how to use digital and social media to drive your business and personal brand. And now, your hosts, A. Lee Judge and Dante Carter.
Let's do this.
All right, once again, welcome to the Business of Content podcast, where we talk about content creation and how to use it to connect with your audience. I'm A. Lee Judge.
And I'm Dante Carter with the Jimi Hendrix shirt.
See, for those of you who are checking us out on IGTV or Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever you're going to see us at, today's topic is the many types of content for business, specifically for business. For business is what we're here for, right?
That's right.
So what are the ones we're going to cover today, Dante?
What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about using video, blogs and web pages, podcasts, webinars, social short format content. So I'm excited.
All right. Well, I'll get it kicked off here with one of my favorites is
Let's
video.
go.
So we're going to start with video, and we're going to probably end up with video.
Okay.
But I'll start with video because for me, with video, you can derive all other types of content from video. So video, I consider a base type of content because from video, you can derive the audio from the video. You can get the text for blogs and for web content from the video. You also have, of course, the video from the video. And when it comes to the short form content, as you'll see we do here with this show, you'll see clips of video, you'll see clips of audio, you'll see quotes and tweets and things that come from things that happen and that we say on this show. So from that base of video comes a lot of content that we repurpose for social short form content.
Can I interject real quick?
Please.
So for business owners, because they're going to want to know the why, right? Why is this important? Can you explain to them why it's so important for you to walk in when you've made this great piece of video content? Why it's so important to think about, okay, how else can I repurpose this material? Yeah,
because often, as we discussed earlier offline, that people will purchase or hire companies to give them content, and all they have is content. They just have a video in their hands. Okay, now what do I do with it? They've got some words on a page. How do I use this as a proper blog? So what to do with that content for business? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
So you got to consider the value of content in terms of reaching your audience. It gives you a vehicle to tell your story, a vehicle to show who you are, to show your expertise, and all those different platforms. It also gives you the ability to repurpose that content to meet the people, your customers, where they are. Yeah. They have the control now.
Definitely.
Right? Before, when there was radio and television and print, and that was it, you could pretty much know that everybody watches the same few TV stations or whatever. Now, it isn't just a matter of, mobile TV, print. It's also mobile, their phone. And then within mobile, you've got all the different channels that people may tune into. When I say channels, I mean IGTV, Instagram. I'm going to get back to IGTV.
Oh, yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those social channels. And you have to realize that your customers have their own favorite. So you have to have content for them where they are because it's their choice where to find you.
Going back to IGTV, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm most excited about, right?
Yeah.
Is IGTV. I think more and more the internet is really showing this world that your TVs don't matter anymore because nobody's watching them. Mm-hmm. Even when before it was, when the major sports events come on, people are going to watch. Well, no, because they're streaming everything on their phones right now. So it's going to be really interesting to see with this IGTV channel. I mean, there's a new channel. There's a new way for people to put out content and a new way for them to own their platforms. So it's going to be very interesting to see how, as we talked about video, how that plays a huge role in it. And I didn't know if you had any.
No, I was gathering some stats last week on video consumption and who was consuming video. And this particular chart, to try to give you a visual of what it looked like, you have a baseline. And from that baseline, it tells you for age groups like, 0 to 12, 12 to 18, 18 to 30, whatever, 18 to 25, 25 to 30. For those age groups, did video consumption on television only, increase or decrease? And those who decreased watching television all had a bar graph below the line. Mm-hmm. Every demographic except for, I think it was something like 40 to 50, and then, 50 to 65 plus. I think, 40, 55 plus. Except for those two demographics, they were the only ones who had a greater amount of consumption of television going forward. And even for those, the under 65s was still very small.
Yeah.
Saying that, we're not watching less TV at that age, but we're not watching very much of it, right?
Yeah.
The other medias or the other forms of getting information and entertainment are rising, but TV is barely growing. So that means that for that cohort of people who are barely watching more TV, they're watching so little more TV that you can deduce from that they're watching a lot of content off the television. For those in the older age groups, they're watching more TV because they watch a lot more news.
Yeah.
And because they're not akin to the technology of watching any other way. That's what they know, right? So even they're watching content on Facebook and LinkedIn, but from a demographic standpoint, they're the only ones watching more TV. Outside of 65 plus, everybody's watching more content, especially video, on everything else but television.
And that's crazy because, think about it right now. Back 3 years ago when I was still reporting, what was driving the stories that we selected was social media.
Yeah.
It was those little snippets. That's what's really giving a lot of weight to a lot of these social issues like police brutality, the Me Too movement. People are looking on here. You have these celebrities who are chiming in, who are giving their opinion. Because, think about it. 20 years ago, we didn't have this access to these high-profile people. Now, I can tweet somebody, and I might get a tweet back, know?
Yeah.
I could get a response back. Yeah. 20 years ago, that was impossible.
And so it's funny since you mentioned, I got to tell you this. I looked at my LinkedIn profile, some of the people who I've connected to lately, and I see all these TV reporters, people who I'm used to seeing on the 6 o'clock news, right? I'm like, why is this person with 6 o'clock news all of a sudden connecting with me? I was like, oh, Dante. So to speak on the power of networking, because you and I work together on projects, and we're sharing our network of people, right?
Yeah.
And so now through social media, through the content we're putting out, we're
definitely
trying to other people. So I'm like, okay, now I got reporters coming through. So it's all because of content, though.
Yeah, but think about how big is that platform now that we're creating.
Yeah.
And between the folks that you have following you, the folks who are following me, we're creating a bigger platform. And we have full control of the content that we're placing on that platform.
That's the big play.
That's the big play. And that's what people have to understand. So when we're talking about content and why it matters so much is because, if I'm coming from outside of your network and I want to see what you're about, the content allows me to do that. These people that go viral, you can probably go back all the way to before they went, like maybe a year or two before they went viral, and you can see how minimal those numbers were. And all of a sudden there's this huge jump, right? But it wasn't just that one jump. Like, people are also going back to see, okay, has their material been consistent? And at which point did that material change to where everybody started loving their content? And you can trace it back to see, because people are going to go back. I've had folks who have gone back, years on me and, hey man, I remember when you put this piece of content out. And that's amazing.
You pointed out two things I want to go back and make sure that our audience hears.
Okay.
You just said basically that content is evergreen. They can go back and see your content from years ago, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
You also alluded to the content is a two-way highway.
Yeah.
So unlike, the old print, television, and radio, when you put out content now, your audience can communicate back with you. They can tell you right then, did I like it? Did I not like it? They can tell you about how it affected them. They can give you feedback on your content so you can not only improve your content, but also have a conversation directly with your audience.
Oh,
so
definitely.
To me, that's one of the biggest differences now with content is that, when you marry content and social media, you have social content, right? Television was not social content. It was one way. Turn on TV and you watch it. If you liked it, you hated it. Your opinion rarely left your living room, right? Yeah. Now you can communicate directly. If I post a post right now on LinkedIn, you can tell me whether you like it or not. Yeah. If I have a video on Instagram or in IGTV or wherever, you can expect immediate feedback on what your content is doing, and it could have very deep business implications to how you change or alter or repair from issues with your own product or service.
Well, it's crazy. When you really think about it, just think about the Ball family and their brand, what they've been able to do. You sit back, and I'm mentioning a big brand to really drive the point home, but think about what they. For our
listeners, the Ball. Give a definition who they are for those of us, those listeners here who don't know.
What is it? Lorenzo Ball,
NBA basketball player.
NBA basketball player. His father. They've created this huge empire. He has 3 sons. All three have really been top recruits. One's in the NBA. Has the other one even been drafted yet?
Okay, well, I don't want to get into sports because you will lose me there. I want to make sure that our listeners know who the Ball family is.
Yeah.
Right? So
they're a big sports family, period.
That's all we need to say. Okay, they're a big sports family. They are more than what you heard during the whole Trump feud with the Ball father about the athletes, right? That was one of the things that he actually utilized media very well himself. Both him and Trump were using media very well to boost their own brands. But to the extent you were saying about what he did.
Well, I mean, they've created a reality show, which only pretty much pushes their brand to another level, right? Mm-hmm. And so you got to think about it. On Facebook, they're averaging 4.5 million views on the Facebook channel. They had the opportunity to take this to BET, MTV, all these big networks, ABC. Everybody wanted it, but they decided as a family, well, let's just go to Facebook and see what happens with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many networks there are out there that can guarantee you 4.5 million viewers. And so that's what I'm saying. So when you can identify the platform that you can dominate on and you identify what content you want to put out there, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about podcasts and everything, but they've essentially put a reality show out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's part of their brand, and that's the biggest point here is identifying which key contents are going to be most important to your brand.
Well, he's a good example of my company logo, Be Content.
Yeah.
Right? If you see me out and you see a T-shirt or you see a website or whatever, you see the hashtag Be Content, don't mistake it as Be Content.
Yeah.
It is Be Content, and I always tell people, don't be content with not being content.
Yeah.
Don't be content, be content. And Ball did just that. Just him and his family just being, they are content. Right?
Documenting
Constantly. Versus creating. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell anybody. I had a consultation just yesterday with a business person who has lots of businesses going on. And she asked me, what can I do to more zone in on who I am? Which brand do I put out first in terms of presenting myself? And I said, well, you know what? You are the brand. She is a moving, living brand, and what she does represents everything else she does. She has foundations and businesses and all those things going on, a lot going on, but the first thing that she is herself.
Yep.
And when I said, if you can document what you do daily, day in and day out, of what you do with these businesses and who you are and what your causes are, your feelings are, you are being content.
Yeah.
And right there you have video, text, blogs, by just being content and documenting what you do to create content. So, okay.
Well, I think the biggest motto is put your day on display, right? That's the biggest thing because people want to know what's going on behind scenes. So put your day on display. Mm-hmm. And remember that. If you can afford to have a camera guy follow you around your office for a whole day, I mean, you've probably have 100 different clips before the day is over of content, 60-second or 30-second pieces of content that you can literally put out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere that your audience is to keep them in tune to what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's what we call a content day. You know? So companies can't get their mind around, sometimes their mind is still stuck in the old school way of, we got to get a camera crew in here and film a commercial. No, not
at all.
What we do with our content day is, okay, let's just say we set up, you're going to interview certain people in your organization, certain thought leaders. We're going to follow certain thought leaders. We're going to interview people. Just being around, having cameras on while you do what you do, you would be amazed at the amount of content that can be created during a content day or just documenting. So let's get back to our agenda here. We covered video pretty well, and something that we will always come back to and talk about because video is one of the hottest means of content right now. And like
Definitely.
I said, I love it because you can always repurpose video to multiple pieces of content. So now let's get on to blogs and web pages. Now, coming off of video, I've actually reversed that some. I've gone and you can actually take some of your written blogs and repurpose those for video.
Yeah.
I've had blogs become video scripts.
Yeah.
Now, it requires some tweaking, some rewriting, and it requires a little bit of understanding of how to present on camera, just like any video. But by the essence of it being a blog first, you have a script. And reading from scripts is hard. I mean, people tend to lose all expression, become monotone, read from the screen. And you know what? Let me let you take that one because as a reporter, you know about even though you have something specific to say, you can't just stand in front of a screen like a mannequin and just talk.
Well, it's kind of like now. It's so funny because even when I've performed radio interviews, and it's so funny, you'll see folks who come up scripted, and I never come up scripted. I'll stutter. I might pause for a second, and it's so funny. But folks that I've spoken with after the interviews have aired, they'll say, "Man, everybody else just seemed so kind of monotone, not really engaged, whereas you seem very engaged. You were thoughtful, and you were always hitting on that point." And that's what it is for that point. But when we're talking about blogs and web pages, I think the biggest thing is when I was back in the media world, we always had to take our script and post it online. We were doing that back then, which you were as well.
Did you have to rewrite it?
Yeah,
for reading, right?
Yeah, because in the media world, you wrote how you spoke. And so you could be a little hip, you could be a little urban, you could use a little slang when speaking because that's how people communicate with one another. But the written word is different. That's where Grammarly comes into play because it can really help you to keep everything organized. But when as I was writing out, you have to make sure that thought on paper is clear. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Making it very clear, making it very concise, and making sure that sentence is complete, that paragraph is complete, because it's easy to kind of go from video to blogs, but it's much easier to kind of go from blogs to video because you've made sure that everything grammatically is sound,
right? Because
those matter when it comes to thought, intelligence, and leadership.
Now, you say it's easier. I think it depends on who it is.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Because if you gave one of us, for example, we're used to be on camera. If you gave us a blog written to be read, right, we would probably look at it, be able to summarize it in our heads on the fly, make it sound more like conversation. But give the average person a script that was a written blog, and it will sound like a written blog. It'll sound like somebody reading an audio book, and it'll be flush, flat, kind of boring. So it depends on who it is, I think. Yeah. So somehow I end up back with video because, that's something that's so powerful. But so let's talk about blogs specifically. To me, blog content, the biggest value in that is SEO value. Can Google find you? Are the keywords you need in that content there for the Google bots to find? Something I often have to remind people of, too, is that from an SEO standpoint, that blog is not written for a human.
No.
It's written for a robot. Robots exist, and they are reading for Google what is on the web. So you want to make sure your keywords are in there, that grammatically, it doesn't have to be, it can be colloquial, it can be, you can use slang, but it needs to make sure that whatever keywords you want to be known for are actually in that blog, actually on those web pages, and that there's enough text there to give some authority to your page, right? So you can have two companies with the same topic, but if one has 200 words, one has 1,000 words, Google will give more weight to the page or the blog with 1,000 words.
Yeah, and I think blogs are tricky, right? Because it's not just the 200 versus 1,000, but it's also capturing SEO while capturing the reader's attention.
Yeah.
And so being very clear on, okay, I want to be able to make sure that these bots are tuning in to what I have up here, make sure that my content's strong, but I also have to make sure that I'm communicating with my audience. And I think that's where the tricky part is, because you want to make sure that within that blog that your voice is captured, because that's what allows thought leadership to stand out. If everybody sounds the same, you just sound like a robot, and anybody could have written it. So it has to be your voice. And really coming in with that understanding is, how do I create my voice? What does my voice sound like? If I was to hear this blog in an audio text, would I be able to decipher my voice? And that's so huge. And so add your experience in there, your life experience. Allow that to give context to what you're writing about and why it matters.
Now let's clarify voice, because I don't want anybody to be confused thinking when we say voice, we mean the audio sound of your voice.
Yeah.
We mean your style of delivery, your thoughts.
Correct.
Your viewpoint. That's
Correct.
Your voice, right? So the way your viewpoint may come across or may be explained should be different from anybody else's.
Yeah.
That's Dante's voice, right? So
Correct.
We all have our own voice, our own opinion, our own angle, our own experiences behind something. That is your voice, and it's important that whether you're, no matter what form of content we're talking about, whether it be video, blog, podcast, webinar, social, it has to have your voice.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go on to podcast, what we're doing right now.
Oh, yeah. I love podcasts.
So right now, this is going to serve as a base piece of content. In fact, I've realized now that for any piece of content that I create, whether it be a video or a podcast or a blog, I'm thinking if that's the first one that I create, it has to become a base for something else.
You got to repurpose it.
Right? So even though I may create a podcast that becomes a blog, that becomes a web page, becomes a video, because the podcast was created first, it in essence will be a base piece of content, right? And for every initiative you go after, always think of, okay, if we're doing video first, if we're writing first, how can this piece of content be a base for multiple other pieces of content?
I think the biggest thing you have to do is leave room to, in essence, tease ahead, right?
Yeah.
Taking, holding out one or two pieces of information that you can say, hey, if you listen to my podcast, I'll speak more on A, B, C, and D. Or if you're going to watch my video, I'll elaborate more on A, B, C, and D. But giving people a reason to also go and look at your other forms of content.
Yeah.
Because nobody's just going to look at it just to look at it. If your audio piece from a podcast is the same as your blog, there's no reason for me to read it because I just listened to you say it. But if there are a few nuggets that you're saving for that blog or for that video, it gives people more of an incentive to say, let me go over and listen or read those.
I'm glad you said that because there's two things there I'm hearing. First of all, I'll say that when we talk about repurposing from these several different types of content, from my personal experience, podcast to blog is probably one of the most difficult jumps to make.
Yeah. Because
the podcast, we're a lot more conversational.
Yeah.
We're talking probably a little longer winded than we would be if it was text.
Yeah.
And without the video, some of the things we're saying might get lost, right? In terms of, with text. So I think it's important that if we were to, and we will, if we take on a project of repurposing podcasts to text, keep in mind there will be some editing to do in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's things we may laugh and agree on and talk about and go off on, a valuable tangent that may not fit inside a text.
Yeah.
In fact, with text, I would argue that the attention span's a bit shorter.
Yeah.
So while you may be driving your car right now, and if you have a 30-minute commute to work, and our shows are typically around 30 minutes, then we can probably catch your attention for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you transcribe this to text, it may be longer than you want to read.
Yeah.
So for this to become text, for a podcast to become text, you're going to want to edit it, get out those key points, as you just said, and make sure it's condensed enough to where it's a readable piece of content.
And that's why a lot of these big time bloggers, what's one of the first things that you see on that blog post? Oh, this is a 5-minute read or a 4-minute read, because they're allowing you to know right off top how long it's going to take you to read this article. They're going to let you know if you have 10 minutes, if you have 5 minutes, you can read this article. And that's important for people because time matters.
Yeah, that's a great feature on Medium. For those of you who blog on Medium, the reason why I mentioned blog and web pages as separate is because some blogs will be blogs on blog sites like Medium. It's a very good site. Some blogs could be your blog on LinkedIn. But if the blog is on your own website, then it is both a blog and it is also a web page on your website.
That's correct.
And then also your web pages that are not blogs are also content to explain what your business does and how it works. And within those web pages of describing your services, describing your businesses, you can have videos or podcasts or things interspersed amongst those to help drive home what you're trying to explain on that page.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
So that's content within content in that case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Content on content.
Definitely. So we talked about video so far. We talked about blogs and web pages. We talked about podcasts. And with each one of those, we talked about how to repurpose one for the other. And so we'll continue to build on that and talk about webinars, something really big with businesses, right?
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, people want to know that you know your stuff, period.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How can you show me? I think webinars are the best way to show folks that, hey, I know my stuff. And guess what? As we mentioned before, it's on demand. Yeah. So it's not that I have to sit down at noon every day and listen to you talk about, or listen to me talk about the importance of storytelling, why it matters, how it shows the results of what I do. But I can listen to it on my free time. My free time might be at 8 p.m. that night. Right. And I can listen to and find out Dante's 7 keys to a great story. broken down in a fashion that I can understand. You know what I'm saying? Very simplified.
Yeah, people tend to think the webinars are, this webinar happens at 5 o'clock or 12 o'clock on this day. Now, I guess because of I think webinars are still kind of catching up in terms of how to market themselves, because even with webinars, the majority of views are going to happen. Well, I would say right now, I would say it's about half and half in terms of what's live and what's on demand. But it's getting to the point now where I deal with several webinar platforms, whether it be, GoToMeeting or On24 or WebEx, and they're all realizing that they need to make sure their on-demand game is strong.
Yeah.
I've actually attended one webinar where I had to attend it twice because I was helping some people train on something. I watched the webinar once, and then I signed up to have people I was working with to watch it again for training. Interesting thing happened here, whereas I listened to the webinar, and the guy had a problem because his dog came into the room barking during the webinar. And it was a little bit of comic relief, it broke the ice a little bit, woke everybody up for a second, and went back to the webinar. A week later, I'm watching this webinar with my team, another live webinar. On cue, dog walks in. Guy said the same thing. I remember, wait a minute, this is what I saw last week. That live webinar was, in fact, not live.
Yeah.
So even if you have to do as this company did, in fact, I give the credit to the platform. The platform, I won't promote that particular company, but that company does a really good job at allowing companies to rebroadcast their live webinars as a second live webinar when actually it's recorded. So whether it's on demand in that aspect of actually it was kind of a manned on demand. There was somebody there with the webinar, but they were just basically chatting. They weren't really giving the webinar. Whether it's on demand or live, webinars are very good for thought leadership.
Yeah.
They're very good for lead generation because that's one of the few pieces of content left that you can say you must sign up to get this content. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can still do it with white papers and with some videos, but short of a course or something, people are reluctant to give up their information, their email address even. So webinars are still a very good way to gather people's information and build your database with a webinar, whether it be live or ongoing on demand.
Yeah, and as you were saying, with people not being reluctant to give away that information, I mean, that's important because it also bleeds off into another very important piece of content, which is the email marketing, and which is creating these newsletters, really being able to engage folks on a more personal level. You can do that when you have their emails. Right. And so I think people are really understanding how important their emails are nowadays. And so it's very hard to kind of, pry those fingers away to get those emails. But that's a huge part of really engaging that audience and keeping them connected with your brand, with your services, with your products.
And keep in mind, we talk about all these different types of content, and we often mention we have had actually a whole show dedicated to where to put your content, what channels to use them on. But you need to be sure you own your content as well. So webinars are a good way to get their email addresses so that you can keep in contact with those people. Because if your whole database is on YouTube or LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook,
you don't own that content.
You don't own the content, right? And you also don't own that database.
Yeah, that database.
Those people, they may disappear tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if you have engaged with them in order to get them to give you their email address, then no matter what platform goes away, as long as you still have email and the internet, you can contact your base and share your content directly with them. So webinars, I think, are one of the best lead generation type of pieces of content that we'll probably ever discuss anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know anything at this point that can one-up that, because that's a way of continuing to engage that audience without, back in the day, what was it that we talked about, the cold calling and how annoying that is. But, I mean, it allows you to really see if your messaging is on point because you have an idea of who's opening up your emails, who's not, and really continuing to communicate. And so that's the huge thing.
Think about webinars, though. You have to have your information game on point. You can't come to a webinar. You cannot present a webinar and not have value. I mean, with video and blogs and podcasts, you might get away with it sometimes if your value lacks. But your webinar, it has to be every single slide in the webinar better have some value, some what's in it for me, for your viewer. That's why it's good to have guest speakers on there, guest experts. In fact, it's almost crucial to have somebody who's outside of your company to speak as a third-party authority on something other than your own. So webinars have to have tons of content for your listeners or your viewers.
And, just another nugget, you mentioned having that guest speaker come on. I think when it comes to that guest speaker, making sure that that person is they're a leader of the pack in their industry. You know what I'm saying? They've got the followers. They have the results.
Absolutely.
There's somebody that's going to add to what you already have, not somebody that's going to compliment you. I mean, you really don't need somebody to compliment you. You need somebody that's going to push your message even further. And so I think those are one of the keys when you're thinking, okay, well, who do I bring on? Figure out which industry you're going after. What's their niche? And figuring out, okay, if it's the law or the legal space, if it's the medical space, who are the thought leaders in that space? Who can I bring in that's gonna open a lot more doors than I could have myself with this webinar?
Authority. Got to be authority. So the last one, and we'll probably get back to video again, but the last one is short form content for social.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to say, we'll both agree on this, that anything we discussed before, we discussed video, blog, podcast, webinars, all of those can be made into short format content for social, right?
Yeah. A lot of, our parents, their parents, they saw the short form content as teasers before commercials when they used to watch the news. You know what I'm saying? That's when they used to see the short form content. I mean, it's the same application, just a different platform, right? Yeah. So it's all the same stuff that we were seeing before. The platforms have just changed. And so people are still taking that same practical, instead of it being a 30-second commercial, it's a 30-second short form content on what you're talking about, what you're bringing to the table, and you're pushing people to tune in to that larger piece of content.
That's great, because the teaser, that's something that people understand.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're turning your nose up to Instagram, to Facebook, even to Snapchat, if you're a business person and you can't get away from a term like teaser, then think about all those platforms as places to put your teasers. Yeah. And that content doesn't have to just tease a larger piece of content. It could tease your whole company, your whole story. Mm-hmm. Get them interested in you in a short piece of content, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, to get them more interested in you, right? Yeah. So it comes in basically two flavors in my book. I see the first flavor being the teaser that helps direct you to the longer content or to the company to learn about them. And the second piece of short form social content is that's so condensed with value that it can hold its own. It can stand on its own. So if you have the ability to create content that's 30 seconds to a minute long, 2 minutes max of short form content, whether it be a sentence for Twitter or a video for Instagram or Facebook, that short form content can in fact be dense enough to provide value within itself. Yeah. Right.
And I think that's so important. And this is one thing that I really want to stress to business owners, because, I spoke with a business owner here recently, and he said, look, man, I love what you do. I love what you provide, but I can't make money off Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I didn't laugh in his face, but on my way to my car, I was laughing. And I had to really educate him on how he was missing the point. And what I'm getting at is, and when I say educate because he said, hey, I can't make money off Facebook. But then he took his commercial and went to a news station and bought time for a commercial.
If I ever hear that, I'm going to say, oh, so I guess you got to make money off NBC. Yeah. You can't make money off Facebook. You won't make money off NBC.
But my whole point is he spent $60,000 on a commercial, right? Oh well, not a commercial, but for the airtime, right? Because it was during one of their prime time shows.
Well, wait. First, he paid money to make the commercial.
Paid money to make it.
Then he paid money to have it seen.
But what I'm saying is, if he would have put $60,000 in the Facebook or Instagram, how many more eyes? I mean, I've put $200 behind an ad before, $300 behind an ad, and I've gotten an impressive. I mean, even with $50, I've gotten thousands and thousands of people liking and viewing that post. And so if you talk about 60,
he would hear that and say, "You said you got some likes and views. What did you get in your pocket?" See, we got to be fair here.
We do. So I got the views, I got the likes, but even based upon that service that I provided, even one person would have made up for that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I did get that one person, but that's my whole point. It's you're targeting can be so much more beneficial on a platform where you can identify who you want, where you know your clients' profiles. I know I want this person in this industry. I know I want them at this level job-wise, making this amount of income, have this amount of success so that they can see the benefit in me as well, and allowing it to spiral from there. But putting it behind a primetime show just to say I got a commercial here.
Yeah. Not to mention that, and this is probably for a whole different show, but if you have a piece of content that does well on social, then that means it has proven itself.
Yeah.
And then you can put money behind it to boost it on social. You don't have the opportunity for TV.
No.
The local TV station will not say, I tell you what, just give us your commercial and we'll run it a few times. If it resonates, then pay us for it. That ain't going to happen.
No, never. Never.
However, on Facebook and your social networks, LinkedIn, everyone else, you can put it out there and see if you get any organic bite on that.
Yeah.
And you can put out 10 pieces of content, and if 3 of them jump organically, those are the ones you put your money behind.
Yeah.
Right? So that's something you can get out of this, creating your own content and putting it out there socially that you won't get from traditional advertising.
Yeah. And so, that's what makes that short format content so important, because people, time is an asset. It's been that way for centuries. Those short format contents allow people to really tune in for 20, 30 seconds where they find their time is not as valuable for 20, 30 seconds. They can see what you're about, and if they like you, they can engage with you. If not, they can keep moving. But that very short content is so important.
I'll tell you what, let's make it happen right now. Watch what I'm about to do.
Okay,
right?
do it.
Just watch. On today's show of the Business of Content podcast, we covered short form content and how you can use that short form content to lead to longer form content and boost your engagement by just doing short, small pieces of content. Be sure to check out the show and learn about video, blogs, podcasts, webinars, short form content, and more. Check us out.
Boom, I love it.
Now, that piece of content will be a part of this podcast, and it's going to be a part of, you'll see it as a short piece of content somewhere.
Yeah.
So you're going to have, an inception of what just happened here, right?
Yeah, especially when they see it on our social media platforms, our LinkedIn LinkedIn is social media, but they'll have a better understanding of what we just did. And that's right. Our whole point of even having this podcast is not about this whole sell. It's right. about providing value, right. and letting you know, not only do we know what we're doing, but we're also giving you the opportunity to see, okay, if I'm making content and I decide, hey, I want to use Content Monster, or hey, I want to use Carter Media Group, I know exactly what I'm getting. And that has to be the focus with the short format content, is being very clear about what you're providing.
And if you think what I just did was a commercial, no, because in most cases when we find snippets of this show to push socially, it's just snippets of the show. It's just snippets of what we did, what we talked about.
Yeah.
And that could have been just as natural, even though I did that very purposeful to show a point. But anything we talk about that's a small piece of content or a small point one of us makes, that can be chopped up and used socially, as you will see in both of our social streams.
Oh, definitely.
That's a great show, man. I think that's a wrap. All right.
Boom.
We covered video, blogs, podcasts, webinars, and short form content. You have just listened to the Business of Content podcast. I am A. Lee Judge.
And I'm Dante Carter.
Be sure to check us out here every week and subscribe. I don't know if you're on your phone right now or in your car or online, but whatever you do, log on to, go to your Instagram, your Stitcher, whatever you use, Google Play, whatever, for your podcast, and subscribe so that you don't miss a show.
And we're definitely going to get deeper into these topics. Right now we're very much at the shore, but we're going to take you into the ocean. Just stay with us, keep flowing,
and help guide us if you have questions.
Yeah,
you want us to talk about. We can even arrange a call to have you on the show with us. So we want to make sure we're giving value and answering the questions you need to know. So if you're a business person, a personality, a small business, you want to know more about creating content, please drop us a line. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at A. Lee Judge. You can find Dante at Dante Carter. Find us on LinkedIn. What's your website, Dante?
It's cartermedia.net. And if you have any questions, you can send me an email at info@cartermedia.net.
All right. You can find me. My main website right now is Content Monster. That's MONSTA.com. There's a form there to fill out, or like I said, meet me on LinkedIn or email me, judge@contentmonster.com. All right. Till next time, thanks for the show, Dante. It was great.
It was awesome. Adios.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Business of Content podcast, brought to you by ContentMonster.com and Carter Media. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to give it 5 stars and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform.